Uh, Hello, everybody. Good afternoon. Thanks for joining. And little bit sorry for that delay. And there was some internet issues. So in this session, I will talk about the web security vulnerabilities remediation in Java J2EE application. Today, typically we will cover different areas of those vulnerabilities remediation techniques and what are the vulnerabilities we face in the Java J2EE application. So this is the high level agenda. What is the background, web security overview, different web security standards, typical web security vulnerabilities, security remediation across the SDLC process flow, web security vulnerabilities remediation methods and techniques, web security scanning and testing approach with usage of different tools. Just to give a background, as there has been increasing security attacks on web-based applications and critical but vulnerable impacts, and due to financials as well as the IT services and product companies are specifically using currently the application security standards through different vulnerability remediation techniques to avoid huge cost of the security breaches and data issues, where the banking, finance, and the government sectors are the worst hit. So there are different types of security vulnerabilities and the penetration threats which need to comply different security standards, and elaborate web security vulnerability remediation methodologies has to be followed. So typically in the web world, we'll have the different types of security attacks and the breaches. There will be the hackers who will try to hack the application and try to pirate different data, and there are a lot of vulnerabilities through those hacking and other application based which actually related to the different financial data. Those has to be remediated. So as far as the web security is concerned, there are different aspects needs to be taken care of, through prevention, detection, and the countermeasures. It can be achieved through different methodologies across the SDLC, like through requirements, design, development, application, and its remediation through the testing, setting up and countering the infrastructures, and configuring different other firewalls, etc. So to address the security vulnerabilities of development and enhancement projects, applications of various customers and commercially available off-the-shelf products ideally should undergo different security assessment in the form of vulnerability scans, penetration testing, and some other manual code reviews. So let's see what are the security transactions over the net and what are the sensitivities around those. Say banking, different e-commerce applications, e-governance applications, healthcare, stock trading, bill payments, bank account information, credit card numbers, different medical information, personal details, property details, trade secrets, etc. So globally, there are different bodies or communities who all defined web security standards. Following are the major ones. Apart from that, there will be ISO, and the COBIT is also there, including the OWASP and the PCI DSS. So let us look at the COBIT. COBIT is more of the information technology and management, and with regard to the IT governance at the organization level, and it's a more of the risk management framework. And there are 4 domains. One is the planning and organization, acquisition and implementations, delivery and the support, and the monitoring. Also, they are typically used as SOX control framework, as well as that other ISO standards. Next one is the ISO IEC 17799. So ISO 17799 is specifically the risk-based information security management framework, which has been derived from the AS and NZS and 4444 and BS 7799 standards. Those are more of the guidelines and principles for initiating, implementing, and improving the information security standards. Next one is the OWASP standard. It's an Open Web Application Security project. I think most of you might be aware about that one. It is a not-for-profit organization which actually focus on the improving the security of applications. It's an open and free software community which do the security related exercise, but it has got the acceptance industry-wide. So OWASP typically runs different projects as well as many materials, and top 10 security vulnerabilities are typically published by OWASP and like in a frequency. Currently it is more of the 2010 OWASP security vulnerabilities and the standards are being followed.
Welcome to Go to Web Events Made Easy.
And also comply with some COBIT controls as well. Next is the PCI DSS. The PCI DSS is the security standards for the payment card industry and with relevant to the payment card data security, this PCI DSS is an open global forum. It goes to the development, enhancement, storage and dissemination implementation of the PCI standards for like payment card data protection. So payment card industry actually revolves around this PCI data standards. So anybody who wants to develop any application, or any organization who wants to develop any application and wants to accept those cards as a payment type, are contractually required to ensure that they are PCI DSS compliant. So PCI DSS is mandatory for the insurance and the banking application. There the quality security assessor is there, so who can review these security aspects and whether those are complying with the PCI DSS standards, and then get the relevant certifications. Now let us see what are the web application vulnerabilities. One is the broken authentication and session management. Next one we talk broken access control. There are injection flows and the cross-site scripting, cross-site request forgery, hidden field manipulation, secure storage like improper session and the cookie management, and the denial of services, insecure configuration and transport level vulnerabilities. These are the typically major web application vulnerabilities which needs to be addressed. So injection flaws are also of different types, and cross-site scripting and cross-site request forgery is a critical one. So this is the detail, we have categorized here different vulnerabilities like injection vulnerabilities, like SQL injection vulnerabilities, XPath injection vulnerabilities, command injection vulnerabilities, XFC injection vulnerabilities, LDAP injection vulnerabilities. Then there are other validation flaws, buffer overflow flaws. There are access control and authentication related vulnerabilities are also there. In the transport level, in the website transport level, we will have the vulnerabilities. So those are also typically the very high risk. And apart from that, there are other Ajax-based application or the rich internet application which also has the vulnerabilities which are needs to be detected. There are insecure storages as well. So the big ones are specifically the OWASP as well as the PCI DSS standards, which actually we'll cover here in detail. So let us look at first what are the OWASP top 10 security vulnerabilities. First one is the injection flow, which will have the command injection, the code injection, and the LDAP injection as well as the XML injection. Then we'll have the ORM injection. So similarly, injection happens when there are some attackers and the untrusted data manipulate the interpreter of an application or execute the commands into vulnerable system or the unauthorized data. Then there are cross-site scripting. This is a very important one. It allows the execution of the scripts in the browser, and data is received through the web browser, and without any proper validation, those data actually needs to be without any proper validation, we cannot go ahead with the cross-site scripting kind of attacks we can anticipate. Next one is the broken authentication and the session management. Where session managements are not implemented correctly, it causes the vulnerabilities as well and makes a request to the server with a random JSession ID. Next, we have the parameter tampering. So where there are type of attacks based on modifications of the data sent by the server in client side, and attacker can access the data which does not really belong to them. So this is based on the parameter or the using those different parameters, temper the insecure and the direct object reference. Cross-site request forgery is again authenticated users are being forced for the website trust and transmit forced HTTP request and unauthorized commands to help the attackers. So the next slide, it is the security misconfiguration, and which happens when we do the deployment typically of the framework, code libraries, and the application server or the web server or the database server. Okay, so security misconfigurations sometimes affect the application like when we install any binaries, as well as any particular other DLLs or any kind of code. So next one is the insecure cryptographic storage, which is this vulnerability is not based on the application, or it's more on the cipher storage systems. And others are failure to restrict the URL access or the insufficient transport layer protection and the unvalidated directs and forwards. So these 10 are the major ones which is being expected to comply across the industries or through the different applications and etc. So let's see what are the PCI DSS standards and what are the vulnerabilities we need to take client applications. It is again, some of those are common, like cross-site scripting, injection flows, then particularly SQL injection, LDAP injection, XML injection, XQueries injection. Cross-site request forgery is also there. A broken authentication and session management is one area. Then insecure communications, buffer overflow, and the contents pooling is also there. There are denial of services and different formatting attacks are also there. So also the HTTP request and response splitting and HTTP request as well as the response smuggling is also there. Apart from that, there are the mail command injection, OS commanding, remote file inclusion, SOAP array abuse, server-side injection is there. Okay, and session fixation is there, insufficient authentication and authorization is also there, and there are different insufficient session expiration is also there. So if we comply more or less these standards, we can expect that those are the PCI DSS compliant, and it will be expected that we get the certification from the PCI DSS, the body for those applications. There are different tools which we can deploy and tell that, okay, these are the compliance for the PCI DSS is required. Automatically, there are rules within those, we build within those, and those can be taken care of by the tools, and a report can be generated. So we'll cover that part in the later in the presentations. Now look at how do we remediate the SDLC processes. So to make the application like compliant with all those security standards, proper steps needs to be followed across the SDLC phases. Like, so we'll see what are those here. Say in the project initiation phase, we need to provide some input to the project plan. And then it will be typically the requirements where we define all the requirements and with related to the security. What are all standards needs to be followed. It might be PCI DSS, or it might be OWASP, or the ISO standards. It has to be documented, like in the SRS or the system requirements specification, including the non-functional requirements. So security requirements will be more of the non-functional requirements. So those requirements need to be assessed by the auditors and the security teams. So once the requirements have been defined, then we'll go in the next phase. Then we'll see what are the typical architecture and what are the risks for those architecture. And then we go ahead with defining the security implementations for those interaction and the data flows between different components. We need to look at the security design guidelines and the checklist. What are the security design guideline checklist actually defined at the program level. So we'll finalize design to security and audit, and finalize the test strategy as well, including the test plans, etc. So design phase will cover more or less the risk assessment for the proposed architecture. Then what are the implications for those interaction between the different components, including the guideline and of design and the checklist. Then we move ahead with the coding part, where we will comply with the security remediation coding guidelines and checklist, and then the security code review is required, and then the static code analysis and the binary code analysis also has to happen. So what is static code analysis and what is the binary code analysis? I will come later part of the presentation. In the testing phase, we will do the vulnerability assessment, comply with the security testing and guidelines and the checklist, and also what are the security standard has been agreed in the requirements, the document, as well as in the design phase as well. Whether the implementation part in line with the whatever the architecture document has been stated. And then we talk on the testing part as well as the vulnerability assessment and comply with security testing guidelines and the checklist. And before that, we'll go ahead with the penetration testing and the deployment phase. There are infrastructure requirement as well as the secure deployment guidelines and checklist will be there. So now we talk about the threat model. So if you look at the threat model has actually a typical approach of decomposing the application with a layer-based approach. So the whole model is to find out what are the threats, and then in which each layer how it can be mapped, what are all things need to be addressed in each layer, and determine the risk around the threats and rank those threats, and subsequently we need to finalize what are the countermeasures are there. So threat actually exploits the vulnerabilities, and it increases also the risk, and risk indicate the protection requirements, and protection requirements are made by the safeguards, and safeguards protect against the threat. And on other side, if we see vulnerabilities increases the risk, and the risk again increases the values with regard to the assets have the values. Okay. So this is the typical threat risk model. So when we go ahead in in designing any particular application or developing the architecture of the application, we need to take a layer-based approach when you decompose the application, and each and every layer we need to identify what are the threats. So in some cases, what happens nowadays a lot of tools as well as the third-party products, specifically like e-commerce site, based on the ATG or the WebSpect commerce. Those always do not require all the threats has to be taken care of in each and every layer of the application. Okay. So we need to first identify in what all layer we need to manage the threats, and then we have to come up with a countermeasure for that. So I'll go through next some of the standards, checklist and guidelines which needs to be followed across the LDLT. Some of the major securities which needs to be considered in the SDLC phase. Here I have identified the input validations, authentications, authorization, configuration management, sensitive data, session management, cryptography, parameter manipulation, and exception management, as well as logging and logging. So this is the design guidelines. Okay, here you see, do not trust the input when it comes in terms of the input validation. We have made a couple of categories, like different categories are input validation, authentication, authorization, configuration management, sensitive data. With regard to that, different security design guidelines have been put. So with regard to input validation, you have put, say, do not trust input, consider centralized input validation on client-side validation. Similarly, in the authentication, it is more of the partition size by anonymous, identified, and authenticate. And similarly, authorization is use least privilege accounts, consider authorization. In case of the configuration management, there are management use least privileged processes and service accounts. So we do not need to store the credential in plain text. Use the strong authentication and authorization or administration interfaces. Do not use the LSA, like that is the another design guidelines. So when it comes to like communication channel for the remote administration, then we need to secure that. So we need to avoid storing sensitive data in the web space. Next one is obviously like, how do we manage around the sensitive data, whether to avoid storing the secrets or encrypt sensitive data over the wire, or secure the communication channel. So these are the typical design guidelines. There are many, all are not possible to cover here, but these are the couple of those. So we need to develop such security design guidelines which needs to be followed in the design phase, and then we need to develop a checklist as well for the design, and we will continue to exercise those whenever any particular application is designed or it is being architected. So these are the one approach which you need to take. So there are other design guidelines as well with regard to the session management, like with regard to the parameter manipulation and the exception management. So in terms of the session management, we need to limit the session lifetime and secure the channels and keep the contents of authentication cookies and protect session state from unauthorized access. So this is very important because those who have been developing those web-based applications need to understand how do we manage the session, how do we secure those channels, whether it is to the HTTP or HTTPS, and how do we encrypt those contents as well as the authentication of cookies. Parameter manipulation, this is very important. We do not need to trust the field. With regard to the trust of the field, we need to validate all the parameters which is coming from the client side, and based on the design you can do that in the UI layer itself. Next is the exception management, and how do we do the unstructured and the structured exception handling. So we have to use the structured exception handling. We do not need to reveal the sensitive application implementation details, nor we should log the private data such as password. So we have to have the centralized exception management frameworks. So then we have the auditing and logging, what are the identify the malicious behavior, know what are the good traffics, and what are the logging and audit mechanism we are having the application tiers. Is across the different application tier, we need to have the secure access to log files and backup and regularly analyze the log file. Then we have the cryptography as well. Like we do not develop our own, so we use basically the tried and tested platforms, like, and avoid the key management of those, and store keys in a restricted location. So we avoid key management. We can use the DPA API cycles. Next, we talk about the development checklist, like where the we'll have the example of some checklist I will be providing here, which will more of the you at the time of development we'll have this checklist validated. These are the checklist we will use that. So one category is the class, and there are the input validation on those. Then there are input parameters are also there, and the cryptography is also there. So this kind of typical checklist we have to get prepared, and then we can follow up and run through at the time of development phase when the code review will go on. So once we have developed the code using the guidelines, then we go ahead and check that through peer review process whether the this checklist are specifically being compliant or not. Okay, so this is again there are different categories. One is the class, one is the input validation, and one is the cryptography. Similarly, few more categories: the exception management and the cross-site scripting and the sensitive data. So in the exception management, few of such checkpoints are over here. So whether code fails early to avoid any unnecessary processing, whether the exception conditions do not allow user to bypass security or the privilege of the code. Within the cross-site scripting, remove the characters or strings that can be used maliciously, that need to be checked. Whether the content type is set as a HTTP header, such as example, like whether it is a character set having the UTF-8 or not, and the HTML response, whether it is the text of UTF-8 character set or whether it is a HTML type content. Cookies, whether we are using to store sensitive information or not, or sensitive information are passed as a parameter to URL or get method or is not. So these are the typical Java J2EE standards and guidelines. Say avoid throwing exception in a clutch block without chaining it with Java applications, and the stack traces can expose sensitive business data as well as making the root cause analysis very difficult. So we need to avoid throwing exception in the catch block. Avoid direct class inheritance from the Java lang.table. All the exception class will not declared by try and catch block, which could lead to unhandled exception. So similarly, there are other guidelines are as well, like how do we do that, declaring the instant variables without the different access type, or how the inner class or the inner class gets access to different fields, enclosing the outer class. And also how when we use the SQL statements, do the JDBC, the prepare statement or the collectible statement over prepare statement, how those should be used and which one should be used. So we need to use the prepare statement and the callable statement, or rather using the plain statement, and this will help in preventing the SQL injection attacks. And this is with regard to the J2EE. So where we avoid using the JSP scripts and including those JSP scripts files. So there are different JSP pages should be referenced as like Java objects or authenticated associated with the J2EE based scoped bin, and separate the business and presentation logic which could be used for the component reusability and the multi-tiered application principle. JSP business should use also the error handling. Lengthy stack traces can increase the security risk by exposing information that is highly sensitive to businesses. Avoid direct usage of EGB entity from the Java client application, and direct access to the entity bean from the client application will expose the data structure, business functionality, which poses a very high security threat. So action classes should not directly use the database objects. Rather, direct access from action class to database table should expose the data structure, business functionality, which poses a very high security threat. So use a business delegate to perform any business specific operations as well. So avoid instance and static field in an action class. The use of instance and static fields within an action class creates a security breach, as these are the objects for the shared among multiple sessions, and thus can lead to confidential data leaks. Next one, there is an sample code with regard to the Hibernate application. So use only the specific Hibernate API to access the database. If really there is any need to use the SQL for the features that are not supported by Hibernate, either use SQL queries defined in the Hibernate XML, or it can be achieved by using through native SQL. So there is an example violation in the remediation that we have got using the statement to execute query. Rather, we should make it as a create query and use that from the bin, and use those typically in the list to get all those specific bins. So next, here is an example of the SQL injection. So as far as the violation is concerned, that in the following example, here the JSP login form where the attacker can enter the malicious command like in the XP on the command shell, or Asterix, or one on this kind of things. So we are using the a request.get parameter, and thereafter select start from table, and then connecting the database to the create statement, and then using the result set to retrieve the data. So when you use here this get parameter, very easily those get parameter values can be accessed or passed or used by the hackers to give the input for the wrong password or any malicious data. So let's see what is the remediation. So this is the remediation, that we use the prepare statement rather than using the statement, and here you have taken the username and the password, and through the set string and get string actually we can execute the queries. So what are the general guidelines for the SQL injection vulnerabilities? Use parameterized queries. Okay, the use escape sequences where we have the escape characters. There are special character combinations, and SQL remove all the unused functions and encoding and decoding of the characters to HTML and the URL, and have proper input validation against all form fields and parameter values. Have proper error handling for all kind of possible error and the exception. Check stored procedure. Use security aligned by group. Whenever possible, use DO pattern with a base DO, which wraps the query execution methods and queries being constructed based on query templates and configured in an XML file and executed based on the query ID, where we can pass the parameters and which can be validated through the whitelisting or blacklisting in the SQL keywords. So these are the typical SQL injection vulnerabilities. Next, we move with some guidelines for the command injection vulnerabilities, which prevent the command injection in similar to preventing SQL injections. So developers must escape the user input appropriately before running a command with that input. There might be the escape with semicolon or the backslash to fix the problem. However, we should use the double ampersand or the possible double by instead of the semicolon. So there is a risk with the semicolon that command injection could be possible. Also, escaping the routine, which is heavily dependent on the shell executing the command. So we should use an escape routine or the shell command rather than just creating our own routine. Okay. Don't use the runtime.exec for rather use the available Java APIs, etc. So this is more on the Ajax-based application. So Ajax-based application will face the similar. So there are rich internet-based application and the Ajax-based application which will face the similar security threat. So we'll use the specific consideration for the architecture to prevent the threats, and the Ajax framework should ensure that the chosen framework meets the security risk of their particular application. So in the Ajax, to prevent the application being attacked from the different known attacks like vectors or the unauthorized access or the injection access, in the design phase we need to consider Ajax specific and the authentication and the session management. Some guidelines like of the caller as the data has been significantly authorized and validated. The session management scheme ensures authentication and the authorization. That has to be taken care of. So these are the typical Ajax based application secure communication techniques we need to follow. Apart from that, there are other areas as well in terms of the session management and the authentication. So a few of those when the Ajax code uses the XML or HTTP request, we need to send the cookies for the current browser with each request, and the context needs to be sent. Also for applications which have the user session, it is vital that authentication are passed and used different pass, and then caller could know the applications, and the caller has to be known. So otherwise there is a risk that authentication passed are used, and there might be some manipulation if there is the caller is the unknown one. So that validation has to happen. Avoid hosting the receiving endpoint of a different server. Just simply scale the entire application up on the same host. This will allow trivially easy access to the trusted session state. So when we are using the web services calls as well, this in case of the endpoint, if we have you are just hosting the servers, which is a different server. So it is better not to host the receiving endpoint from the different servers. Just avoid this. And also there are Ajax clients which uses the XML and the HTTP requests with the GET request. This embeds data in the URL. Even though data is generally not visible to the user, it should be available in the browser history. So what to enforce the post request with whatever it is used, ensure that the user is logged on, and ensure that the data is safe to perform our own calculation. So if there will be some enforcement with regard to the post is being used rather than the do guest, user also should be properly authenticated, and role authorization and the SOX compliance execution of duties also needs to be followed. So we need to check the data whether it is acceptable to the business rule boundaries. So business rule validation is required, data validation is required. These are the key aspects. So there will be the different data contracts. In case of the web services in based applications, there will be different data contracts through different endpoints. So we need to ensure that there are the data level securities. So then we'll look at whether how the security scanning and the testing would take place. So the security scanning and testing is an important aspect. One is in the SDLC, we typically use the design guidelines or the development checklist to ensure that whether the code which has been developed is thoroughly secure one. There are not many holes. But then we need to do the scanning and the testing also. So when you perform the scanning and the testing, there will be the scanning and testing in the development phase, there will be scanning and testing in the QA phase, and there will be the scanning and testing in the pre-production. So in the development testing will perform the security code review based on the coding standard checklist guidelines. It is similar to the coding standard checklist and guidelines which I have demonstrated. Then we need to perform some static code analysis, whether it is through the unit testing tool or the IDF plugin. So there are a lot of plugins available like PMD, etc., which also do the secure code review. Then perform the scanning in development servers. So once the code has been developed in the individual developer's desktop, and then the code has to move into the development server. The scanning can be performed by deploying a separate tool also in the development server. So this development testing is important. Then we perform the QA testing. Then the code will move into the QA environment, which is a little bit like a larger environment in terms of the integration, etc., like component integration or the interface integration. So we'll have enterprise level tools, and we can do the vulnerability scanning in the QA environment and perform the code analysis, which will include the binary code as well, so that the tools obviously will be much more robust, which has been deployed rather than in the development box. Next, it is more of the pre-production testing. So once the QA testing has been passed, we need to do some kind of scanning, like vulnerability scanning, as well as the penetration testing in pre-production server and perform the binary code analysis. So pre-production testing is similar environment like production. Means ideally it should be like that. And so we'll do the binary code analysis there, and also integration is also there. So through the different interfaces and through different integration points in the pre-production, thorough code has to be scanned, and the application has to be tested, like penetration testing, etc. So this is more or less the methodology for the security scanning and the testing and the steps in development, QA, as well as the pre-production. Next is the security vulnerability scans as well as the code review objective. Here the objective of the security vulnerability scans and penetration testing and code review is to ensure that most of the common security vulnerabilities are addressed, or those security standards which needs to be compliant as per the non-functional requirements defined in the requirement phase. So those applications which are moving into the production should not have the common security vulnerabilities. That is the expectations. And if there are any security vulnerabilities due to testing and the code reviews, it has to be analyzed and plan the remediation or the outstanding risks in every phase. Next is the manual and automated code reviews. The source code quality and the maintainability are the major aspects of the security of each and every application. So there are two types of reviews. One is the manual and the automated way through the static code analysis and binary code analysis. So let us see what is the static code and what is the binary code analysis. The static code analysis is reviewing the source code and analyzing it for programming errors and unsafe construction. But binary code is different. What are the binaries, specifically jars, CR, and the EXEs, and the third-party applications and the legacy applications. So it is more of the scanning of the binaries, ERs, and the jars, and the legacies. So let us look at the typical security remediation techniques for the code review strategy. There are manual code review process which goes through the coding standards, guideline, checklist, and the peer review. Apart from that, there are automated tool-based security code review is also there. Say Hampurai tool is there, Java Pathfinder tool is there, Checkstyle tool is also there, and PMD tool is also there. So PMD or the Pathfinder, the Checkstyle, some of those can be used in different IDs as a plugin. Okay, so it is up to the developers and the technology stack as well, that what are the tools they are going to use and how they can remediate in the IDE on low. So as far as the approach is concerned with regard to the vulnerability and penetration testing, there are vulnerability scanning and testing, there are penetration testing, and there are manual vulnerability testing as well. Security vulnerabilities are typically of different types, like cross-site scripting and the response filtering, HTTP attacks, lightweight directory access protocol, and the injection as well. So scanning will be more on the best of the best practices and the custom policies, or the requirement that can be usually specified in the scanners. So there are rules in the tools when you use the scanning on the methodologies which are followed based on the tool. There are the rules which can be set. So the results of the scans will usually produce a report. So each and every tool will produce a report which will highlight the vulnerabilities found and their risk rating. The record should be addressed and documented. Those who have done the security scanning through the tools, they will see that there are lot of vulnerabilities will come, but it is not always possible to remediate all the vulnerabilities. But there are some high ones or the medium ones, or the based on the severities, few needs to be cross-checked and see that which can be remediated. So these are the more or less the using the tool. So when do we talk about the manual vulnerability testing, it will require the knowledge of the application or the intelligent detection of the sensitive data. So or specifically the test data is very important in the security space. So intelligent detection of the sensitive data will require. There are only these are only partially detectable or impossible to detect by scan tools and require human intelligence. So we need to be a little bit innovative that which data we are giving as an input, finding out how those can be detected, and the sensitive data will allow the exploitation. So there are only partially detectable or impossible to detect scan tools, but some of the data will require really the lot of human intelligence. So what is the penetration test actually? So penetration test is a method of evaluating the security by simulating an attack by a malicious user. So the intent of the penetration test is to determine what are the feasibilities in the attack and amount of business impact of a successful exploit. So it is not easy to do the penetration testing of the server. Typically this kind of testing will happen when you deploy the tools specifically in the pre-production or similar staging environment. So it will employ different methodologies and the tools and actively analyze the system for the potential vulnerabilities which may result from poor or improper system configuration, known or unknown hardware or software flaws, or operational weakness, or in process or technical countermeasures. So it will involve active exploitation of different vulnerabilities. So there are two ways we can do this penetration testing. One is the black box testing and another is the white box testing. So black box testing we do not need any knowledge as user but white box testing will require some knowledge of the system. It might involve the user ID and the password. So combination of different types of different characters and etc. So penetration testing and vulnerability testing, these are the two important aspects. We need to decide on which one to use and when to use. So let us see what is the criteria. All the applications which are typically the external facing systems or the financial systems require the vulnerability and the scanning. But also we can use different code review strategy from the vulnerability perspective as well as the penetration testing. So external facing system or the financial systems which is actually having the client interfacing and the interfacing with other external application and third-party applications as well will require both the vulnerability and the penetration testing. But those are not the external facing systems or the financial systems, or there is no integration touch points. They do not typically need the penetration testing. Only vulnerability scanning, code review, etc. will hold good. So this is with regard to the security testing and the different vulnerability and the penetration testing. There are two types of scanning strategy, using manual penetration testing and the code review automated scanning tools. We can use some tools like Tampere, which will allow the fields to be altered manually and using application scan or the Fortify or Webinspect kind of tools, which will have the automated security analysis. So on top of that, there are other tools as well, like I have mentioned those in the preceding slides. So let us see what the Tampere talks. So some examples like how the unit testing can be done using the Tampere. So Tampere Web Security tool is a small utility which do the HTML form tampering for penetration testing of web applications, but it is very popular from the different browser perspectives of IE and Firefox also it supports. From IE version 5 it supports, means upwards, 5 and upwards. Like there are other useful tools for the security testing of the applications to ensure the testing and exception that developers should not make any irrational assumption. So when they use the Tampere, they should not make any irrational assumption, but what are the data sent by the client browsers. But it's a freeware, like, and it's a very popular one. So we can use at the unit level the Tampere and see that like all the UIs which you are developing or using the HTML form embedded in the either JSP or the JSF, we can use this one. We can use the Webinspect. It is actually very popular, and it is used for the security testing and the assessment as well, and the complex web applications, including the Web 2 technologies. It has got very wide scanning capabilities, and it has got the simultaneous crawl and audit as well as the concurrent application scanning. Fast and accurate automated web application security testing is also possible. So it provides the web service security testing, SCA, and like even some of the other methodologies specifically in the database side also you do the proper testing. Another unit testing tool is the security toolbar, which is typically they provide the product web application unit testing. So it can be used the QA phases of the SDLC, and it has got the quality assurance group who can use the toolbar and perform the security and the regression testing. This toolbar also allows both security and non-security professionals who can use the web applications. We can test the each page, and there are different functional procedures are also used in the large enterprise. It can test actually the different page or different application, and it provides also the HTML report. This is also one popular tool. The migration strategies also can be used. So now I'll talk about the different secure testing tools, which actually widely used in the industry, and there are some comments and with regard to their functionalities. NTO Spicer, that is the vulnerability testing tool, and provide analysis for compliance report of the PCI. So that is the one important feature, and also the OWASP, SOX, and the HIPAA and the security standards are there. Apart from that, there is Paros, which is Java-based proxy type vulnerability scanning and testing tools. AppScan is from the IBM, but it's a very robust security testing tool. It can be used in the development QA as well as the pre-production boxes as well. It is the security which can be used for the enterprise level. Then we have the Aquantix, which is web application, web service, and database can be tested, including the penetration testing. It can be used for the unit regression, integration, and the system testing as well. So this is also useful for the web services testing. This is quite popular, the Aquantix, which is for the web services testing. The Senjik Hailstorm, that is a vulnerability testing tool, not the penetration one. So all the tools are here do not necessarily will have the penetration testing capability. Some of the tools are actually the freeware. So Senjik Hailstorm is one of them. Web Scrub, it is also a security testing framework from the OWASP. That is again freeware. Proxmon is a penetration testing tool. It's a robust penetration testing tool. HTTP Print, it is a web server fingerprinting tool, and it relies on the web server characteristics to accurately identify the web servers. The Netcraft, which is the testing configuration errors and application loopholes in server code of the scripts. There is ScanWeb, which assesses the Web 2.0 applications. So you find there are a couple of tools which are using the modern technologies like Web 2.0 on the web services. So ScanWeb is one of them. Similarly, Acunetics are a few of those. Next is the Qualsys, which is the penetration testing tool and is a simple and easy to navigate the web interface. The Tampere is there, which it fits any phases of the SDLC across requirements to design to development to testing, and is highly customizable and can be tailored to our needs as well. It also provides the OWASP specific, like different security remediation criteria. COBIT, that is vulnerability and penetration testing tool. Tampere we just discussed, and Webinspect also we just discussed, and Fortify is another one that is integrated with the static code analysis and binary code analysis, and it also can be used across the different servers like development server, QA server, as well as the pre-production server. So JData Proxy, it is a penetration testing tool, and Parasoft SWA test, that is again web services testing tool which has got the penetration testing capabilities. Then we have the app code scan, which is integrated in SDLC and supports both Java and the .NET, Ajax area, and the WS. So this is more or less the tools which we generally use and can be downloaded, or some of those as a freeware. So that's all, like more or less with regard to the presentation part. And now I'll move into the question and answer session. These are some of the references which I have used here. I have given those. So let's see what other questions are coming up like. So one
Welcome to GoToWebinar, Web Events Made Easy.
Hello? They're hearing. Yeah, I'm just addressing those questions. I'm addressing those questions. So there are, so as we talk about the what are the ways we can use the SDLCs and what are the list of tools can be used to find the threats and risk at each stages of the SDLC. Those are the tools which actually have been used in different SDLC area. So if you look at the presentation further and see the some of the tools which can be used specifically, like AppScan, similarly the HP Webinspect, similarly the Tampere. So those can be used across the SDLCs. Next question is from the Achut Naik. How secure is the usage of HTTPS protocol for these threats and vulnerabilities? So that is a subjective question in terms of how to use the HTTPS. Are we going to using that through this particular web server, or are we using that through particular application server, and how are we using those? So HTTPS is obviously a secure one, but even then HTTPS being used with a particular application server like the WebSphere or the WebLogic, then those are actually very secure. But if we have other different tools like Tomcat or that kind of tools, those might not be the very useful one. So in that case, typically the suggestion would be to use the SSH2 or the secure shell kind of funnel. Next is the question from the Dinesh Kumar, that how do a password expiration can be set up in coding. Password expiration can be set up in coding in the sense there are Java-based APIs are there, and you will have the lifetime of particular cookies or the set password is there. So different other frameworks is also there. And the Apache-based framework, if we use those, and there are the methods which through which you can use the password expiration mechanism. So in case we are using any kind of LDAP or any other mechanism, so I will have the user authentication tools. we can set that in the server level itself. At the server level itself, that password exploration can be done. But like when we talk about using the Java-based API, that there are some third-party tools has to be used, and there we can set the methods, and that time also we can set in the password can be expired. Next question is by the Ramesh Rajamani. It is, what do you think about the security aspect of the JavaScript frameworks, or like Ajax or the jQuery versus the server-side program, or the JSF or JSP? So to answer your question, like JavaScript and the Ajax or the jQuery, these are actually the very old technologies, and there we need to do a lot of manual coding, especially in JSP also, to make those secure. But in case of the JSF or the Ajax, like they are the latest technology. So certain coding standards or the guidelines which can be followed, like with regard to the JSF as well as the Ajax. So in case of the Ajax and the JSF, we need to use those securities and the session handling mechanism properly. So JavaScript is not that secure. It's because there are the cookies and etc. If we use, it might not be very effective. But in case of the JSP or the JSF, there are other ways. You can use the session handling, and you can make the secure communication with regard to that. And you can use the services also through the web services and the Ajax. There is a protocol which is basically Java WS protocol, and the standards are there. So Java-based WS standards in the protocol can be used for those server-side JSF and the JSP specific security standards. So one more question is from Shalu Prashant, that cards we use, whether the security cameras gateway is generally, and what are the further security measures we use in the IT sector and the banking domain. So in the IT sector and the secure banking domain, there are different payment gateways. So in case of the payment gateways, those will have the separate authentication of the authorization mechanism. So those authentication and authorization mechanism and the tools which we are using, there the different configuration parameters are there, and when we deploy different specific WAR file or the UR file, we will be able to make those role-based authentications, and there are USM LDAP is there. So we can take the metrics for the USM LDAP. So in case of the user role metrics can be set in the LDAP or different authentication server, and it can be taken care of. So it is more of the with regard to the configuration. So I think I'm done with most of the question. So thank you for joining in the session. Thank you. If there is any question or anything, you can contact me at devashish.majumdar@capgemini.com. Thank you. Thanks for joining.